we will make sure it's ready when we do.
But where the park
Is everyone
is,
here?
that's where the loss of.
Well, there's enough microphones here. Nobody cares about Fox.
I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm just saying it.
Mic check 1 2
I was gonna
3
ask
4.
her, see if-
Mic check 1 2 3 4.
Thank you.
Yeah, something like that too. I kind of got busy with other things.
Yeah, we're good. Sorry, I won't think it's in.
So I was just walking over there with my daughter, you know, figuring out stuff. Splashing on the rocks.
See if it's, you see if you can see it on your side.
I don't want to. I can see it right here.
See what the delay is.
We'll wait till 3 and make sure everyone, who all's here? Is
Everybody?
Everyone that matters, that other words?
Yeah.
Yep.
And I said 3, so we'll wait till the top of the hour.
Bell rings.
Okay, so where is this supposed to be on here? Which we got one. So we probably should zoom in just a little bit. Probably should zoom in just a little bit.
Better zoom in where?
Can't with the live app.
I know.
Tell me which way to go.
I know what you're trying to do.
What's the point in having a live app if I can't control the camera?
Lighter.
That's about how long of a delay it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a 15
Yeah.
second delay.
Audio picked up
Yep,
okay.
I did.
That's
because the mic's right here.
Ooh, good thing we waited.
They made it just in time.
You're not.
And doing what's
Channel 5 did a bit of coverage. Just the one with the number two.
The one that,
You just started cooking, right?
Yeah.
well, we were watching it.
Okay, oh, not
Yeah,
bad.
that's when it was
Where'd you live? Okay. I never really. Yeah, I moved here from South Carolina. Columbia. Yeah, I'm born in it. That's it. Yeah. It is. But Oklahoma's nice. People are nice. Oh, yeah. Do you rant?
Yeah.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah, that's true.
Did you do the storm damage?
No, we were watching all three.
Last night. Did they send you?
We went to Vermont. Connorville
Y'all's
area.
view
There was
was
one
made
facility,
a lot bigger
but it's so rural. You can't get
when it showed up when it was close.
But we did do a live shot.
When it was west of I-35, it wasn't.
So we're close to the live shot. He's talking about brutality. Capitalism home.
Yeah, we handled it.
That were
You know, it kind of died.
Or damaged.
damaged,
So
not like flattened out or anything.
Because the one down
but
in
everyone was
North
so
was right out.
Oh, okay.
And I knew,
when
I
it,
saw it head to the lake, I said, it's gonna go to the lake, and it's gonna kill itself. It's just gonna suck all that water out of the lake.
Is that what it is?
That's what it did, yeah. I mean, it looked really cool, but it had this huge wide base, and then it went
Yeah.
she's in the
point.
Yeah, she is. She's really
And then when
and
it
I
back
see it
out.
now.
And I was like,
Yeah.
when they get that, then it's just gonna be like
Yeah.
park.
No.
Tired as hell.
She's really good.
It just came in? Just go on.
We had the best shot of the one still going.
Yeah, so
Our poor guys, we used to all play that almost.
Depending on where you are at that
I was gonna say either.
Yeah.
Cause it was all good to use everywhere. Cars passing him.
I know, that's what, we were watching and we saw cars go by and we were like, oh, this is not gonna be good. And then they finally got a little bit up the road and they stopped. And I was like,
Cars.
I was just like, oh,
Since people need a break, let me get some more money out of my picture.
I'll let them come. Channel 5's guy kept going forward. We're on the 28 on the Kingdom. Started to cross. And then backwards. And then it started moving towards me. And I was like, and at that point, both 4 and 5 were pretty much in the same spot because we were watching side by side. And Channel 4's storm chaser was just a little bit in front of Channel 5. And you could see somebody pull up in front of Channel 4. And 2 seconds later, you saw the truck pull up in front of Channel 5. They're not a beautiful front. I did that down in Sutton.
And I still for all the weeks.
And she pulled over and like,
Because they are going to put us in percent cut. So for nothing.
wait a second, and about 30 seconds later, there goes Val right through the middle of the dot. And 30 seconds after that, there goes Vaughn right in the middle of the dot. Great big channel right on the side of the truck. She's like, that was awesome. And then I was thinking because she was like, oh Mike, we're watching it. It looks like it's got a tornado on it.
Like, I don't.
AT&T, great big AT&T serviceman pulls in front of her and stops. All you see is that big AT&T world.
Sadly, I'm working.
And you know that Bill is next.
Everyone ready?
Yep.
What did you say? We see in here rolling, okay. My headphones, but I trust this one.
Okay, good afternoon. The Oklahoma City Public School District continues to search for budget cuts as the district faces a catastrophic financial shortfall due to a statewide revenue failure. Today I'm announcing an additional $10 million in cuts that the district must make. And obviously this is a very difficult time for districts statewide. The only remedy to this situation would be for the legislature to find a permanent fix for educational funding. Including this $10 million that I'm going to announce today, we will have cut $23 million for the 2016-17 school year. And after today, we'll still need to cut $7 million more to get us to that $30 million mark. That's $30 million in funding that our students in Oklahoma City are going to lose that should be dedicated to their educational experience. We've cut to the bone already, and we're doing everything we can to avoid cutting any more teaching positions. These are really tough decisions because there are many items that we're cutting that we know are important to our students' educational experience. But unfortunately, this budget situation is so dire that we're being forced to make these difficult choices. Today's budget cuts are including, we are making changes to school bell schedules to save on transportation. We are delaying new textbook purchases for the district. We are permanently reducing school intercession from 5 days to 3 days. We are eliminating district funding for student testing, which includes PSAT and SAT testing, and we are making significant reductions to the budgets for AP testing and IB testing. We are reducing elementary school supply budgets. We are delaying athletic equipment and uniform purchases. We are reducing adjunct coaching positions, significantly reducing contracts with outside vendors and consultants, and suspending all non-federally funded travel. As I mentioned earlier, the Oklahoma City Public Schools must still make $7 million in additional cuts after today. And this in order to get us to our $30 million in cuts for next year. The difficult options that the district will be forced to look at moving forward for the final $7 million in cuts will include school consolidations, suspending school programs that could affect athletics and arts, additional staffing reductions, including central office cuts going all the way to the very top cabinet level positions, and furloughs. This is a very difficult time for our school district, and I welcome any questions that you have at this time.
Is it difficult for you to do this, taking over sort of halfway through the cutting process?
Yeah, this is a very difficult time. These are some of the deepest cuts that I've ever seen to a school district, and we're having to cut things that I believe are really, really important for our schools. So yeah, this is an extremely difficult time to step into this role.
How are these decisions being made?
One of the things that we did this year is we have basically identified every single thing that we're paying for in the school district and grouped them into 4 different categories. Tier 1 were the things that were probably easier to cut, just things that were making us more efficient. Tier 2 are things that we don't want to do, but that in an emergency we had to. We are now into Tier 3 and Tier 4 cuts. Tier 3 are just things that we know are really terrible for schools, and Tier 4, which we're getting to, will be devastating.
Where did you come up with this $30 million number?
So the $30 million is a combination of different different buckets of funding. We're having to cut $12 million for next year because of the statewide revenue failure. There's $4 million in cuts for this year's revenue failure out of this year's school budget. Our district is also losing $9 million in E-rate funding at the same time as the state cuts. And then in addition, over the past couple of years, we've had increase in spending to build back a curriculum department. And unfortunately, because of our overall situation, that's having to go away as well. So at this time, it's a total of $30 million for next year.
So the $12 million, that's what you're anticipating, like when the legislature comes through with the budget, that's what your cuts will be?
Yes.
Okay, so if they come back and say education is just a 5% cut, or it's even, or whatever, what then?
We are still going to have to make cuts because of the E-rate funding and some of our other situations. Jean, would you like to share anything additional?
Sure.
This is our CFO.
Hi, I'm Jean Boswick.
Can you come up? Can you pull a chair up right here, Jean? Thank you.
And if you could explain a little bit more about what E-rate funding is, just for general public.
Sure, sure. This is Jean Bostwick, our CFO for the school district.
Good afternoon. We appreciate you all coming out and showing an interest in what's happening for Oklahoma City Public Schools. First of all, for E-rate funding, that's a discount program offered by the federal department related to internet services for schools. And so we have been looking at our purchase orders related to that, and we've been closing those or lapsing those for the last 3 years. We were using that one-time funding stream in anticipation of school funding recovering from the 2010 cuts. We knew that we had to continue to dedicate funds for the success of our students. We've been utilizing those funds, and they run out. This is our last year that we'll have access to those. And there was one other question.
Oh, as like, say the legislature comes back, with their budget and says, okay, we're only gonna cut 5%, or we're gonna keep education the same.
Right, so the 5% cut, what makes it really complicated, as you guys know, with over 500 school districts looking at the student enrollment growth, is that even if it's limited to 5%, that is where we're getting really our moderate, our middle of the road anticipated cuts of $12 million. That's been forecasted at $200 per weighted ADM student, and that's where we're getting that number. So 5% is still going to be a deep cut to us. If they hold us flat to this year, which has already been cut almost $5 million, we still haven't recovered on a per student funding basis from 2010. We've had increased enrollment, increased costs. So that language is helpful, it's encouraging, but it's still not going to be like we're back whole and in great shape. We're still going to have to face reductions in funding.
So just to clarify, some of this $30 million is because of the revenue shortfalls, and some of it is because of predicted budget cuts in the future.
So the majority of it is related to revenue shortfalls that have been declared this year and anticipated next year. And we're taking a middle of the road as we consult with other CFOs. We also talked with the State Board of Education, trying to get the best forecast information we have. The majority of the funding cuts are related to the state revenue failure this year.
Have there been any thoughts about some of the higher level administrators, for instance, taking a pay cut? Like for instance, Superintendent New is making $240,000 a year.
What I can say is we are making staff cuts all the way to the cabinet level. So part of what we will be announcing in the coming weeks are some cabinet level reductions. So at this point, we're cutting positions, not at this time looking at changing pay.
Do you take a stance on the 1-cent sales tax? The initiatives that's being led by OU President David Boren?
I think we are not taking a stance on that at this time.
Hey, Aurora, can you tell me what revising school bell times means?
Yeah, so what that means is we have a certain number of schools that are at a high school start time that starts at 7 something. We have another set of schools that start at a middle school start time at 9 o'clock or so. And then we have 55 schools that are starting at this elementary start time, which is around 8:20. So the issue is if we can get more schools that are all starting at the same time, we can actually just reduce the number of buses that we have on the road. So some elementary schools might move to a high school start time. So their day will start earlier, they'll get out a little bit earlier, but that can allow us to just run fewer buses because more buses can then go back around to pick up the middle school kids. So we're just trying to have a little bit more of a balance, so we have the same number of schools starting at each of the same times.
Did you have any response to the state superintendent's tweet when she talked about just the outrage people should be feeling that if this happened in any other field, there would be more outrage, people would be up in arms?
And this is a really difficult time for school districts, and I agree, these are cuts that we do not want to be making. These are things that we know are good for kids, and so we are hugely disappointed that we're having to do this, and we really do hope that there's a way that our state can come up with a stable funding plan for education in our future.
What is an intercession?
Intercession, because we are on a continuous learning calendar, we start school earlier than the other districts, and we have a break, a 2-week break for school in October, and at the winter break and in March. And what we do, because we're on the year-round schedule, is we bring kids back if they need extra tutoring for 5 days of that break, so we can help catch them up in their learning gaps. What we're saying now is we don't have enough funding to do 5 days of that during intercession, so no, we'll just bring them back for 3 days of their break.
So do you see these cuts hurting academic performance ultimately?
These cuts will hurt academic performance.
What is IB? What is IB testing?
IB testing is International Baccalaureate, so the IB and AP, which is our advanced placement, these are the college level course tests that students can take in their junior and senior year at our high schools. The IB program is at class and SAS, so we're not cutting it out entirely, but we're having to reduce the amount of funding that we're providing from the district to pay for those exams.
So the other testing that you've been providing for free, that's going to go away? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, not all of it, but this year we did roll out PSAT testing that we were funding as a district for students in grades 8, 9, 10, and 11. We are eliminating the funding for all of that due to these budget cuts. We were also offering the SAT testing for free to our students at 11th grade, and we will not be able to offer that as well for the coming year.
The contracts that you're reducing with outside vendors, which ones?
We are not naming those as of today because we are going to start contacting vendors and talk about those reductions in the coming days. So at this point, I can just say it's part of our $10 million, and we will be reaching out to those by the end of this week.
And are you going to eliminate any contracts or just reduce?
Yeah, it varies by vendor, so there are some things that we are eliminating for next year and others that we're significantly reducing. We're trying to bring more services in-house to have people on staff who can provide those professional development services, so we're not paying as much money to an outside vendor who's coming in to charge $2,000 a day to assist with that, with coaching teachers. We're trying to have people on staff for regular staff salary that can be out in the schools every day to provide that same service for a significantly discounted cost.
You said you're looking at consolidating schools. Do you know how many and when you guys expect to make that decision?
I don't know at this point. We're working on trying to get to the next $7 million. We wanted to announce today's cuts, and so we will be spending the next several days really working through the numbers to try and figure out what is it going to take to get us to the last $7 million. So I should have information about that within the next week.
You know how much you're gonna reduce the elementary school supply budgets by?
We are reducing the elementary school supply budgets by $10 a student. So it was $25 a student that we were giving to schools, and it's now gonna be $15 a student. And that funding goes to pay for things like copy paper, toner, just school-wide supplies that schools need.
And the textbooks, like, all textbook purchases will be suspended, or?
We're delayed this, yeah, so we have done a curriculum adoption, so we know what we would like to purchase when money comes back. But right now, we're gonna suspend the purchase of those and continue to use our old textbooks until we can get enough funds to buy the new textbooks.
For all grades?
Yeah,
Or anybody that's.
for the subjects that are under adoption this year, yeah, we're just not making any new textbook purchases right now.
So nobody's getting any new textbooks next year?
No.
What about the equipment? And
Well, there might be some small things, like if we are short some books, we're just saying we're not gonna do the big textbook adoptions for brand new textbooks. But if we're short some reading books, we'll go buy those so everybody can have a book.
is the same true for the athletic equipment uniform purchases? Does that mean none next year, or?
Yeah, well, we are delaying the purchase for another year, the exception being things that need to be replaced for safety reasons, like helmets.
Can you help us understand what federally and non-federally funded travel would be?
Sure, we do have things like Title I and Title II dollars. Those are coming from the federal government, which allow us to do professional development for teachers. For the types of professional development that can qualify to be used, that we can use federal funds for, we will allow those things to happen. The issue becomes, and you might need to clarify for me, what would come out of general fund?
So general fund would be training for employees perhaps who are not academically directly related, maybe in central office. And so there's professional development for the accounting staff, for the HR staff. That would come out of our general funds, and we're going to be eliminating that. It wouldn't qualify for any federal funding source.
As you look ahead to more cuts, is there any programs or initiatives that are maybe safe from cuts because you have to keep them in place due to federal programs or an agreement with the Office of Civil Rights?
Yeah, the one thing that I can say is because of the OCR resolution that came down from the Office of Civil Rights, we have a district mandate that we must provide more supports to teachers for discipline, and I think that's a good thing. And so even though we are cutting significantly in a lot of different areas, we are going to invest an additional $250,000 in the coming year to support teachers with discipline. So we will announce later what that's going to look like, but we know that it's a federal mandate that we do that. It is a good thing for teachers. We're glad that we're going to do that, but it does mean that we're going to have to cut additional other things to be able to pay for that.
Time for a couple more questions.
A charter school expansion proposal is being talked about. Does this affect that in any way? And how so?
So this is kind of our budget situation for the district. I do know that some of the charter schools would like to still bring their proposals forward to our board for a vote. KIPP will be bringing a proposal forward to present to our board at our next board meeting. But I think the district's gonna have to figure out kind of big picture how all this impacts our budget. But the proposal will move forward.
What about John Rex?
That's not coming at the next one, but I do believe they plan to bring their proposal forward in June.
I had one, I guess, last question. Do you think a student will be able to feel the cuts? Like if I'm in ninth grade and I maybe comprehend what's going on around me when it comes to money, do you think a student can feel them?
Yes, the students will be able to feel them. I've actually already received emails from students just talking to me about the impact that the budget cuts are going to have on their experience next year. We've got some programs that are going away in the schools due to budget cuts that the students are really upset about, and I'm upset about them too. These are things that I wish every kid could have, And so it's just gonna be a really difficult year for Oklahoma City Public Schools.
Can you identify those programs that they're upset about?
It's just specific teachers that they're disappointed to lose. We have, some arts positions that have been cut at schools that, students are very sad about, and I've been receiving some emails about those.
What about the parents, you know, there's a lot of shortfalls with, you know, athletic equipment and, you know, and supplies. Parents are gonna have to somehow provide that stuff, because they will still need it. What do you gotta say to the parents of the district?
This is a very difficult time. I mean, what we're trying to do right now is avoid cutting any more teaching positions, so we're having to look at everything else, including cuts all the way up to the very top levels. This is definitely a place where we need our community to band together to help us figure out how we're gonna get through the next couple years. In terms of, you know, hopefully they can partner with us to fill those gaps, that we can figure out ways to still make sure that arts programs are at our schools, through volunteers, through donations, those kind of things. But this is just a really difficult time for all of us. But we are doing the best we can with the $30 million of cuts and trying to do everything possible not to impact students, but $30 million is a huge blow to the district.
You said the tier 4 were the things that were like, they were like the most precious and you really didn't wanna, they would be like most impactful. Can you just list some of those things that you're really trying to save? You said teachers, but.
Yeah, I mean, the tier 4, I mean, basically we put every single thing that we fund in our district into one of the 4 buckets. So tier 4 would be eliminating entire departments from the district, eliminating, you know, just entire programs altogether. So you know, these are basically just the very large, I don't know if you.
Yeah, it's eliminating a whole program versus just reducing it. Right now, we're trying to hang on to the threadbare components of any programs that we have for our students. But if we reach that point, programs in total could be eliminated.
Did you list what was in each tier, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, if you could briefly do that? What is tier 1?
I did not, but tier 1 and tier 2 are essentially everything that we've announced so far, and we've already started to announce, some of the things that we've announced have started to go into tier 3. The remaining things that I mentioned, which include school consolidations, suspending programs that could affect athletics and arts, additional staffing reductions, including cuts all the way to the very top, and furloughs. Those are the biggest things out of tier 3 and tier 4 that we are probably now going to be looking at, because we've cut everything else that we can out of tier 1 and 2.
Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Checking the news release, it's right here. I don't think y'all have it.